I endorse everything that's been said so far, and I ask you to bear very much in mind the message given to us by our friend, the sister from Palestine, about the plight of the people in the West Bank and Gaza. Heed their call. They're asking for our help and our support. Give them our help and our support. I was in Gaza in January of this year. 1.5 million people in prison and under siege, short of food, medicine, water, young people unable to travel, unable to work, losing hope. Give them hope, give them support. Sanctions against Israel will bring about peace in the area and bring about justice for the Palestinian people. To me, it's an incredible honour to be invited to the Durham Miners Gala, the 126th Gala, and seeing those banners coming in down that hill over there, and this sort of bizarre mixture of the cricket scoreboard, the fairground, and over there, jungle madness, and here, great sanity. It's a fantastic occasion, and well done for being here. And I promise you next year, I'll bring a goodly delegation from Islington to improve their education into the history of the Labour movement. Because we have to educate ourselves. The Durham Miners Gala was always an expression of the solidarity of the pit communities, an expression of solidarity, of hope over misery, of sharing over greed, of developing a decent society over a divided society. Above all that, the Miners' Union and all the other unions brought us the National Health Service, brought us the welfare state, brought us council housing, brought us the vision of a society free from greed and free from want. That is the vision that sustained the Labour movement for so long, and that is the vision that will take us back to an election victory. I hope not in 5 years' time, I hope very much before that. But we have some lessons we've got to learn. The defeat in May was very, very painful. Painful for those that lost elections, painful even more so for those that are now losing housing benefits, that are going to lose their council housing if this wretched coalition has its way. Those children that will lose the chance of a decent school. Those young people that will lose the chance of training and apprenticeships. That new generation that are going to be wasted on the dole queue just as Thatcher's children were wasted on the dole queue of the 1980s. We have a lesson to learn. The lesson of the 1980s, but also the lesson that when we did have the chance from 1997 onwards, yes, we put money into education, health and housing. We didn't put enough, but we also didn't challenge the philosophy of the greed of the marketplace. That is what we have to do. Because this condemn agenda, and it is a condemn agenda, is as ideological, if not more so, of Thatcher, Lamont, Major and all the others of that miserable period of the 1980s and 1990s. 6 billion cut already from public expenditure, cut against the poorest and most vulnerable within our society. And as our brother from PCS has pointed out, collect the tax from those that don't pay, don't pursue those who can't pay. The slashing of public services is going to hit hardest on the very poorest and most vulnerable in our society. But I ask you, who caused this crisis? Where did this crisis come about from? Was it profligate school meals workers? Was it greedy refuse collectors? Was it nurses sending all their money to the Cayman Islands and all those tax havens all around the world? Or was it the very rich in our society given a free hand by the lack of banking regulation that were able to export capital that should have been invested in jobs and services and homes in this country rather than wasted on those tax havens? And it's a European-wide phenomenon, what's going on. I was at the European Social Forum last week, and we heard what is happening in Greece, in Spain, in Portugal, in France and other places, where the government is imposing wage cuts, where thousands, tens of thousands are losing their jobs. And the media say, well, it's all to do with the psychology of the Greek people. It's all to do with the mañana concept in Spain. It's all to do with the wine in Portugal. Utter tosh! It's nothing to do with any of that. It's everything to do with an economic philosophy that would do credit to Ramsay MacDonald and Philip Snowden of paying the debt at all costs, whatever the price, whatever the burden, whatever the victim, providing it's somebody else. The economic medicine that's being imposed on those countries now is exactly the same economic medicine that's been imposed on sub-Saharan, African and Latin American and South Asian countries for decades, where they've been forced to pay an unpayable debt, where they've been forced to privatise public services, where they've been forced to destroy all the gains they thought they'd made on independence from colonies. Well, that whole philosophy is now coming home to roost. Are we going to accept this economic orthodoxy that creates poverty, creates misery and creates division, or are we going to fight back against it? Are we going to stand up for the values of the labour movement, for socialism, for peace, for justice, for the needs of education, housing and everything else? And I'll tell you what can defeat us. It's not them, it's us. They, the world's bankers, International Monetary Fund, European Union, they are utterly united in what they want, utterly united in deflation, suppressing the economy and creating unemployment, utterly united in that. We need to be equally united, not just across every union in this country and every community in this country and every social demand in this country, but all across Europe and internationally, to show that the voice of those campaigning for peace, justice and socialism will not be silenced by these people. We will win through. We will defeat them and we will win that decency that we want in this world. I finish on this. There's some practical points ahead of us. In the autumn, probably November, the autumn spending round is going to come round. That's going to be proposed a massive cut in capital spending, in revenue spending, and a ruination of everything we hold dear in the principles of the welfare state, the National Health Service, free education, decency in housing, and all those things. Before then, we've got September the 29th, which has been called as a European-wide day of action. I've been told it's an inconvenient day because it clashes with the Labour Party conference. Nothing could be more convenient than clashing with the Labour Party conference. How about we suspend the conference that day and go out and march and demonstrate with those who are taking strike action throughout Europe to show their opposition to the agenda of cuts and social division. But I'll conclude with this point. All public spending is not good, and there is some public spending that should be reconfigured and changed. We lost the election for many reasons, one of which I honestly believe was the deception and the dishonesty with which we were led into the war in Iraq and the current expenditure, massive expenditure on the war in Afghanistan. We have to be a Labour Party and a Labour movement dedicated to international law, to human rights, to peace and justice, not lawless invasions, a fantastic expenditure and the tragic loss, in the case of Afghanistan, of the lives of over 300 soldiers. I don't want to see any more dead there, or Iraq or anywhere else. I want to see a process of peace, not of occupation and of war. And not spend £76 billion replacing the Trident nuclear missile system and all the waste that goes with that. Instead, invest that money in what we need. Invest that money in the skills of the workers that make Trident and make the weapons and make the bombs into making things that do good for people, not harm for people. Arms are not going to help us out of the recession. They might help us into another war and another conflict. Let's recycle our thinking into those brave people that founded the labour movement, that sustained the labour movement, that wanted a world of peace, justice and equity, not a world of war, division and a growing gap between the rich and the poor. We know which side we were on. We know which side the Durham miners have been on for all these decades. We know what side our entire labour movement is on. United, we can win this debate, win this argument, defeat this government and bring about that fundamental desire for social justice, peace and harmony within our community. You can't do it while at the same time you're giving handouts to the rich. Support the poor, support the demands, and we will win out that way. Thank you very much for giving me the honour of speaking today.